Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namasami. Welcome everybody to this full moon Uposatha Day program. This is the third lunar day of our 3-month winter retreat. And this is the second one of these Vassa programs that we've organized for you. Let's take the first part of this time together to sit together in meditation. So I would welcome everybody to come to an upright and balanced posture, making the body as comfortable and stable as possible. Feeling the weight of the body on the chair or the cushion, and the feet or the legs on the floor or the cushion. Feeling this as your connection to the earth. Aware of the room where you are sitting. Noticing the space around you. And then bringing awareness inside to be aware of what we experience in the mind, aware of the physical body. Letting go of any thoughts or agitation or worry, any excitement from earlier in the day. Let that all recede. We only have to be in the present moment. And letting go of tomorrow, any worry or excitement we have about tomorrow. Just leave it alone. Tomorrow is not yet here. Our only job is to hold what's arising in the present moment in full awareness. And connecting with the physical sensation in the body is a good way to keep in the present moment. It's such a simple object, but it helps us let go of the endless television show of our mind cogitating and thinking and planning and worrying. Instead, we are very still, just observing the sensations in the body. And starting with the top of the head. Aware of the sensation there. And relaxing the top of the head. Aware of the side of the head. And relaxing. Aware of the face. So much of our emotions and mood are expressed by the face. Just letting the face be relaxed. Aware of neck and shoulders. Relax. Aware of the arms. Relax. Aware of the hands. Relax. Aware of the front of the body. And relax. Aware of the front of the legs, the thighs, your lap. And relax. Aware of the knees. And relax. Aware of the shins. Relax. Aware of the top of the feet. Relax. Aware of the bottom of the feet. Relax. Aware of the back of the calf and the back of the leg. And the seat touching the cushion. And relax. Aware of the back of the body. Relax. The back of the head. Relax. And the top of the head. Relax. Aware of the entire body and any sensation arising anywhere in the body. Keeping the mind calm, steady, and open. Just receiving all the sensation coming from the body. And if the sensation of breathing is clear, can let that come to the front. Aware of the rise and fall of breath, part of the body, in the present moment, just rising, just falling, just breathing in, just breathing out. And if the mind starts to think about the past or future, just take one moment and notice what's going on. And then when you can, let go of those thinking and come back to breath. Resting awareness on the in-breath and out-breath. Staying in the present moment. My dear friends, in our talk for tonight, I want to continue on a theme that we've been developing during this Vassa, and that is how to make peace in the world, how to make the unbridled anger, irritation, even hostility, even harming that seems to be going on in society. So then how can we be personally buffered and protected so that we don't become ill by a contagion of the illness which is out in society? And how can we use aspects of the teachings of the Buddha to become more intentional in our social relationships to really support peacemaking? Since we started this study, it has been really amazing to see, even in the context of the monastic community, where things that come up that arouse emotions or upset. You could say, the upsets we have among the nuns or in a monastic community they're kind of like a tempest in a teapot, because we do at least have some very well-developed efforts that we make about practicing good speech and being careful and conscientious with our behavior and so forth. And yet, nevertheless, it can happen. There can be misunderstandings. There can be mistakes can happen. There can be upsets. And then how? Well, since we started studying the Buddha's teachings about peacemaking, we have become so clear. We have been taking more time and effort when there's a misunderstanding or something happens that's not skillful. We've been taking the time to look carefully and see what really happened. And we have been delighting in the way that the Buddha gave the ways that differences between people can be resolved in a way which is amicable, safe, and mutually beneficial, that doesn't leave the residue of either remorse or resentment. And well, it's amazing. The system works. We notice that when we take time to invest in really practicing with the suggestions of the Buddha, how even we've got a good community. Our community is diverse with different personalities, but nevertheless, we have a pretty good Sangha here. And we might not be the A++ Sangha, but we're a good Sangha. We're making the right effort and making progress on the joyful path of development that's laid out by the Buddha, and supporting one another. And yet, nevertheless, sometimes mistakes happen. And then the Buddha gave us these wonderful ways to take care of it if there's been a mistake or something was unmindful or something was unskillful. The sutta that we've looked at several, but the one in particular that I'm going to draw from tonight is called the Samagamma Sutta, which is number 105 in the Middle Length Discourses. It's a bit of a pun, okay? So Sama means either golden or black, and Gama means the village. So Samagama might mean the golden village. But if it was pronounced in a slightly different way, it would sound like the samagi, which is a particular kind of a assembly. It's a harmonious assembly, and it's especially an assembly that is done at a time when if there's been a serious quarrel among the monastics, even, people want to split up the community because they had some big argument. Then afterwards, when they resolve it, they can have what's called a samagi patimokkha, which doesn't have to be on the full moon day or the new moon day. It's done at any time when we want the community to come together, to come back into harmony, to be reconciled with each other. And so this reconciliation is called samagi, which is a pun with the Samagama Sutta, the one that I'm teaching you, the one about the village of Sama. One interesting question is about forgiveness. It seems like one of the things that causes a lot of disruption in our personal psychology is if a person is not able to forgive themselves, or if they feel that the other people in their life that they're close to are not able to forgive them, or if they feel like they can't forgive themselves, that they've done something unforgivable. And so carrying around this burden of remorse. And one of the things, it's kind of interesting. If you try to look it up, do a word search in the sutta about forgiveness, you don't necessarily find that much in the suttas, except something that's very formalized. When a person makes a mistake, then they ask for forgiveness. And sometimes the Buddha speaks to them in this stern kind of way and says, yes, the thing you did was really unskillful. You should have remorse for that, and you should ask for forgiveness. And then he gives the forgiveness. But at other times, I used to ask my senior monk teachers about this, because I knew that in Christianity, forgiveness was really important. And I wasn't really seeing it in Buddhism in the same way. And one of the senior bhikkhus said, well, the Buddha never felt disturbed or upset by your bad behavior. He's not actually able to be harmed by your bad behavior. And so because he's not disturbed, he doesn't need to forgive you. It's only the person who's taking up a disturbance, taking up a wound, who then needs to do forgiveness. And so in that way, it almost sounds like forgiveness is more like a therapy for the person who's holding a grudge, and not exactly even relevant for a person who's done something unskillful. In another sutta, this is in the Samyutta Nikaya, in the section about the headmen, there's a series of very practical stories that's about the local head of the local village. So he's not even necessarily a Buddhist. He's not deeply involved in meditation, but he needs to be wise because he's the leader of the village. And in that section, the Buddha has a teaching about remorse and forgiveness. And he said that, well, if you did something unwholesome, let's suppose you killed. If you thought, I have killed a human being, therefore I'm going straight to hell, there's no way to get out of it, that would not actually be a correct understanding of karma. Because even a person who once killed a human being could have spent 99 years doing good deeds, and they could have found ways to develop in wisdom, to develop in insight, and to come to noble attainments, even though previous to that, on one occasion, they had killed. So just the killing doesn't mean that you're doomed forever. And then a different person who might think, well, sometimes I kill, but most of the time I'm good. So therefore, I'm not going to hell. I'm going to go to heaven because I'm usually good. Even though sometimes I'm killing, that person has also got a complete wrong understanding of what karma is. This is coming to like a remorse on how to come out of it when there has been significant wrongdoing. And what the Buddha said, the right approach to karma is if a person has killed, if they could reflect, the Blessed One advises that killing is an evil, unwholesome deed, and I should give up killing. Therefore, I make this determination that from this day forward, I'm not going to kill again. That is the correct result if you have a proper understanding of what karma is. If you understand karma, it gives you the courage, the strength, and the determination to make these kind of decisions when you understand something to be unskillful, to not repeat it, to not do it again. Okay, but now, where is forgiveness in that? You don't see anything there about forgiveness. But I've got an idea. This just came to me as I've been reflecting for more than a week about this Samagama Sutta number 105 in the Middle Length Discourses. He is, it's starting with a situation with the Jain monks. Their teacher has passed away, and they're falling into disputes and quarrels. They're almost at war with each other. This is after the death of Niganthanata Putta, who was one of the other famous religious leaders at the time. They fall into these huge quarrels. And so then the Buddha talks about the 6 roots of arguments. And the thing that occurred to me about this part of the teaching is actually what he's describing is the qualities that people have when they are holding a grudge and not forgiving one another. We've seen that in many, many different places, the Buddha gives teachings about how to let go of resentment, how to not hold on to a grudge, not to be angry. Like the simile of the saw is an example of there's many, many teachings on this theme. But the ethical imperfections, which are the roots of arguments, it's anger and hatred is one. Hypocrisy or hiding or spiteful, malicious, unforgiving, merciless attitude. There's a whole pile of adjectives I gave you that are the definitions of the Pali words makin palasin, and I think it would come down to cruelty. Then can you see if someone apologized to you and you even say, I forgive, but inside you don't forgive them? Can't you see how you could feed into this inner dialogue that would be harsh and cruel and without mercy towards that person? But if you really forgive, then all of these qualities would be washed away. And then the third root of arguments is envious greed. So if you see that the other person is successful, or if you see that the other person is not perfect and yet they get away with it, somehow or rather, sometimes we struggle so much to purify our own mind and heart. And then others, people who seem to be like just naturally happy. Okay, so it's possible to have that a resentment, which is an attitude that would prevent forgiveness and which would feed quarrels. Then the next cause of quarrels is treachery and fraud and deceit, and it has to do, again, coming on this theme of forgiveness. If a person has done a wrong thing and they want to be fraudulent and hide it so they hope they won't get caught, then that's not to their benefit. It's to their great harm. It creates so many impediments to practice, so many impediments to happiness, so many impediments to developing insight and wisdom or being able to practice meditation. And then it can also happen at the interpersonal level, at the social level, that you can have a group that agrees to sweep something under the rug, who agrees to pretend that nothing is happening, when actually something is happening that needs attention, that should be pointed out, that should be taken care of. And so the cleanliness and the wonderful quality of having a good, open, interpersonal process that's safe and that allows people to look in the most honest way at their own individual thoughts, and it also allows them to help one another. That's just the opposite of being in a community that's filled with hypocrisy, that is sneaky, that is pushing things under the rug. The next cause is called papicha, which is having a bad wish, wishing harm for another. And actually, in the realm of this question of what is the Buddhist real definition of forgiveness, right? So the opposite of forgiveness is that idea of justice that means somebody did a bad thing and we want to punish them. We wish them to suffer because somehow justice makes us think that to even things out, they have to suffer. There has to be revenge. And so this papicha, this having ill will, that's the thought of revenge, which is, again, opposite of forgiveness. And then the last one is it's called worldliness, and being obstinate and quarrelsome in holding on to our worldly views. Now we know that we know what right view is in terms of the launching point of the Noble Eightfold Path. But what makes right view, or what makes this wrong view, is partly what ideas you have, and it's also, in a very important way, how you are holding it. So even if you thought, in my opinion, there is dukkha. Okay, that's the first noble truth. That's part of right view. But if I say there is dukkha, and everybody in this room has to agree that there is dukkha, they have to understand it the same way that I understand it, and anybody who doesn't agree should be thrown out. See, that would be like a worldly, completely backwards way of holding that idea. And in particular, the monks in the story were engaging in debates, saying, you said second what you should have said first, your premise is wrong, and you've drawn the wrong conclusions, and so on and so on. And in effect, they were having a debating society, and whoever could beat up the other person in debate and put them down and defeat them would be considered that they're the winner. So this is not what we're aiming for. So doing the opposite, finding the way to get rid of all of those negative qualities is, you could put it all together, and you could say someone who was really skillful in the art of forgiveness, who was able to be with someone who's in trouble, to be with someone who's unskillful, and to speak to them in a way that's going to really help them to come out of their unskillful position, to come into what's right. And that's like, I've spoken before about what a skillful apology is. And then there's something else, which is skillful forgiveness. The skillful apology comes up in the middle section of this particular sutta that talks about some different procedures that we have in the monastery. And I have been thinking about these procedures in a way that, like in your city council meeting or in your condominium board meeting, or in dealing with your children or your teenage children, or at school or at the workplace, or in any kind of community. It seems to me that when these ideas are adopted, even though these are things that are procedures of a monastery, these ideas can make for happy communities, communities where people get along and help one another, where they are safe. One of the basic ideas is that in the monastery, we have a lot of rules and regulations, and people may think it's kind of ridiculous to try to follow 311 rules, and then each rule has got its own little booklet with all the ins and outs of it, like what are the factors that made you fulfill the factors so you're actually responsible for this offense, and what are the factors that would make it not an offense, and what are like some stories or some examples of the situation where it originally came up, and so on and so on. So each rule has got its own little set of teachings, and then it's a lot to hold on to. But the thing is that we have a possibility for clarity and a possibility to know what we did, was it a fault or not? And if it was a fault, how can it be taken care of? So then it's settled, it's resolved. Most of the time in the community, if somebody does a fault, they can take care of it by acknowledging it to another colleague in the monastic form. And the formula is your colleague would say, you would say, you know, I had this fault, I confess it. And then your colleague would say, do you see? And you would say, yes, I see. And then your colleague would say, in the future, you should restrain yourself. And then the person who did it repeats 3 times, in the future, I will restrain. That's the entire system. And it didn't come about because one monastic sees somebody else doing a fault and goes, accuses them and forces them to confess. Instead, it's because somebody realizes that they've made a mistake. They realize that they've broken one of these many little rules, and they want to be free from remorse, and they want to be in harmony with the community, that they're together with a group which is holding on to the same values. And then because of the desire to be reconciled and harmonious to the community, and because of the desire to be free from remorse, then they would initiate and go to acknowledge their fault and to do whatever they have to take care of it. All of the so-called, like punishments, like the justice system in the monastery, it's so gentle and so delicate, and not really accusative at all. So if you would imagine, like if you worked at a job, and if your employer had some principles or some values, saying these are the values that we uphold in our company, and if they frequently discussed what those values are and what it means in how the work is done at that place, and then because of that discussion, then if you had done something that was a violation of the ethics code of your employer, it could be that someone would try to hide their fault or get away with it. They would try to avoid the consequences. They would hope that if somebody saw them, that person is not going to rat them out and tell on them. And in that way, a certain kind of like a sickness comes into the company, even though they've espoused these values that the company holds. But if it was really encouraged for people to do this honest self-reflection, to have their little group meetings and to say, yeah, well, I was trying to think, like the customer's always right. Maybe that's one of the values of this company. And I say, well, right, but I just told that customer to her face, she's wrong. and then they can say, well, according to our company code, don't do that. And then if it were just that because of acknowledging a fault or a mistake, a person kind of gets almost rewarded because it says, okay, now you've acknowledged it. now we can take care of the consequences of that and just go forward. Or if you have, like with your children, if your child makes a mistake, and if you hit them or get very emotionally upset, and if you feel embarrassed and start yelling at them in a really strong voice because they made some kind of mistake, then that child is going to really take a sickness and want to be afraid to speak honestly with you, be afraid to tell you what's really going on. But if in the family, if the parents start at the younger ages and always encourage and give it very positive how good it is if a child acknowledges their mistake, and just find a way, if they made a mistake, we find out how to take care of it, and then we go forward. And then that builds a foundation that then it could be then later on in life, something really difficult comes up, like a heavy mistake, a mistake that's not very easy to take care of it and go forward. But because we have been practicing on the little faults, on the little mistakes, even for years and years and years, we've been practicing again and again, knowing how to acknowledge a mistake, see how to take care of it, how to set it right, and how to go forward. And then reciprocal, acknowledging and really welcoming each other to have that kind of honesty. How great it would be, how wonderful the family life and the workplace and the other circumstances would be if they had that kind of acknowledgement and a clear way to take care and put it behind. Now, in these procedures that are given in the Samagamma Sutta, there are a couple of cases where the person doesn't see their fault. And this is something that could happen. You could be accused of something, but actually you didn't do it. And you're mindful, you have a good memory, you have kind of examined yourself on a regular basis, and you really know for sure that you didn't do it. Okay? So in that case, you could say, I remember and I didn't do it. And in the Buddhist situation, that takes care of it, it's finished. So there's not room in the monastery for anybody to go around carrying a grudge and saying, well, they say they didn't do it, but I think they really did. I think that person is lying. So in the monastic life, we have the possibility that a person can be honest, and we have that mutual trust. And we say, well, if you don't remember it, okay, then it's finished. That's the end of that procedure. And then there's another procedure where you don't remember it because of insanity. So in monastic life, we have the insanity defense. So if somebody is accused of making a mistake or doing a wrongdoing, and if they say, I was having a psychotic break at that time and I can't remember it, so, or if they say, I was in a blackout and I can't remember it, or they say, I was sleepwalking and I was not awake, so I don't know what you're talking about because I truly don't remember it, but it's because of some, defect of my sanity, then that's the end of it. It's forgiven. So they don't blame people who are doing making mistakes and doing unskillful things because of mental illness. And now, think about how this applies to our world. There's a lot of mental illness in our modern world. There's something about the conditions of life, especially even during these recent years of COVID. It seems like there's been an increase of the amount of mental illness in our world because people have been deprived of normal human society. And it's caused a lot of people to become very sick. And because of this sickness, we had this tremendous, like an explosion, like an epidemic or a pandemic of really wild, bad behavior, which is arising from mental illness. Now, those people might not be in a complete blackout, but they could be very far away from having the capacity to be mindful and conscientious and to develop a right ethics and to learn how to behave skillfully. And so what the Buddha is saying, if a person is not, if they fail 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times to do something skillful, and it's because there's a deep mental sickness which is not yet resolved, then they get forgiven again and again. And wouldn't it be lovely if we had a world like that, where people who were mentally ill were forgiven for all of their inappropriate behavior? It's a challenge to the community and any intentional community. It's like if a person is really out of control, sometimes we're not able to be with them in a safe way. And then persons who are sick get pushed out from society. They get pushed over to the margins of society because it seems like they're too disruptive, or whatever group they try to join or be a part of. And that kind of person is actually covered by another one of the monastic procedures. They have, I want to read you what exactly what the sutta says about this. It's called aggravated misconduct. So somebody points out that they've done something that's serious and needs to be taken care of. And they say, "No, Reverends, I don't recall committing such an offense." And they try to get out of it. And then their colleagues pursue it, saying, "Surely you must know perfectly well if you recall committing that offense." And they say, "I don't recall a serious offense of that nature, but I do recall committing a light offense." They try to get out of it that way. And then they say, "Reverends, I'll just go so far as to acknowledge this light offense, even when not asked. And then I won't have to acknowledge the serious offense." And then they wiggle around and are deceitful and confused about whether they remembered or not, whether they had that fault or not. And now what this reminds me of is what happens every day in criminal court, right? Somebody commits a serious crime. They get an attorney, and the attorney says, "Don't confess to that serious crime. I'll work it out so you can confess to a light crime and not acknowledge your serious crime." And because the court wants to save time, because it takes more time and money for the court to conduct a trial and bring somebody to be convicted of doing a heavy crime. Therefore, they go along with this. It's actually a lie, and allow the person to confess a light crime when they really did a heavy crime. And they're doing it because they just want to get through their business quickly. And so the system itself promotes dishonesty and trickiness and using an evasive approach. But then if somebody came and they wanted to be honest, and they say, yeah, I did it, I want to confess, and I'll throw myself on the mercy of the court, actually, it would not work out well for them in the US court system. I heard a story of a woman of a Japanese background who was in USA and was caught on a tax evasion. And against her lawyer's advice, she confessed fully everything that she had done and threw herself on the mercy of the court. And the judge threw the book at her. He was not the least bit merciful. So she got like extra punishment for being honest. The procedure that I was talking about people with mental problems. Sometimes people, because of whatever it is in the causes and conditions of life, they really can't be good. They've really gone into a wrong way. Whether you say they're mentally ill or some other aspect of their background or their culture, they will not cooperate. They will not be good. They're trying to get away with things. And what the Buddha actually prescribed for them is sort of a shock treatment. It's not that they would be beaten up, not that they would be put in solitary confinement, not that they would be fined and made to pay money or something like that. Instead, that they would be like temporarily suspended from participating in the activities of the Sangha, so they would not be participating in the formal ceremonies. They wouldn't be giving blessings. They wouldn't be the one who's receiving the food on behalf of the Sangha. They would go at the back of the line. Nobody would talk to them. It would be just like saying, you go in the corner, go to your room and think about it, and you're not able to participate until you've considered this. Or it could be that a community could say, it doesn't really work at this community. We're not able to manage it. You have to leave this community and try to find another community that will be able to accept you, where you can be more successful. There was a case in the Buddha's lifetime, near the end of his life. There was a bad monk, and he expelled that monk. And it was so shocking. It was like, it's such a rare event. And that monk, he was so shocked. That's why I say a shock treatment, that he something shifted, and he became willing to listen and willing to change and willing to adapt his ways. The last thing that I want to bring out tonight, and this is more about how to borrow from the standards of the community of monastic, and put this into effect in your family or in your group. And that is what's called the 6 qualities. I'm trying to open it up so that I'd be sure that I don't miss one or tell them to you in the wrong order. Six warm-hearted qualities that make for fondness and respect, that create inclusion, harmony, unity, and without quarreling. So if we wanted to have a happy life, we can develop these. And if we want a happy group, we can develop these. Even a person who is who doesn't get angry, or a person who's very good, they've got a pure mind and a pure heart. Sometimes a person like that could be sort of like cool and reserved and withdrawn. And that person could be more helpful to their companions, perhaps, if they would develop these 6 qualities. One is to consistently treat the companions with verbal kindness, with mental, verbal, and bodily acts of kindness. So don't have a conversation or send an email without blessing that person and expressing with words your well-wishing for that person. When you see the person who's in front of you, let the first thought that comes into mind, how can I be kind and beneficial for that person? When we do the chores or the work or the activities, the things that we are doing in our life, which are not creating any harm to ourselves, not creating harm to another, those things we can do again and again. But why not do those things with the thought of kindness? So if my job is to sweep the floor, can I sweep the floor thinking, let my companions enjoy this clean floor? Any kind of chore, I can think about it in terms of letting it create a more beautiful, calming, uplifting, or helpful circumstance for others. So those are the first 3. And then the 4th one is a mendicant shares without reservation any material possessions they have gained, even the food placed in their alms bowl. And so this is beyond basic morality. Like if you were to give me a chocolate bar, this happens a lot in monastic life because it's gotten around that monastics like chocolate. So you can tell what kind of monastic it is. Do they take that chocolate bar up to their room and enjoy it privately? Or do they open it up and share it? And so these small acts of kindness, even, monastics, we don't have very much. but we very frequently give gifts. One time, a bhikkhuni was visiting, and she had one of those small pads of Post-it notes, and had she'd gotten hold of a smiley stamp, and she'd like stamped the corners of the Post-it notes with some smiley faces, and so she gave each monastic got one little pad of Post-it notes as their gift. And you can see that it's not a very expensive gift. But this is a person who doesn't have very much, and they look around and they say, what do I have? And of the things that I have, is there something that I could use to make into a gift to give to somebody else? So that's the fourth quality. And then the fifth one is that they live according to the precepts that are shared with their companions. This is the precepts of Buddhism. They should try to be unbroken, impeccable, spotless precepts. And these precepts, the precepts of Buddhism, are liberating. They're praised by sensible people, not mistaken, and they lead to samadhi, or they lead to deep meditation. So the precepts are not stated here to be leading to enlightenment, but they're stated to be leading towards that calmness of mind, to being free from afflictions, free from the hindrances. So as a result of holding the precepts, one can individually have a much better shot at being able to have success in meditation, which then subsequently is opening up to wisdom. There was a woman, one of our members, who had a teenage daughter, and when she lived in Oakland, I used to regularly go down there and stay with that family when I had a teaching engagement in Oakland. Listening to this mom and daughter as they were discussing the activities of the day was sort of like being in a college seminar on ethics. They were really discussing in this very open-minded and sincere way what are our values? What do we think is the right thing to do in this particular circumstance? And so then Mom was supporting and helping her daughter to become a mature, independent adult who was able to think for herself and also able to appreciate ethical behavior. So an aspect of being in a community is if you can have a community that has got some values in common and they're very clear about what's in common, that can be a happy community. If you're in a community or a place where there's a diversity of beliefs and values, a diversity of people's ideas about ethics, let's say if you were testifying at the school board meeting or the city council meeting, people have many different kinds of values there, right? But one could be a skillful approach is to think about what are the important common values that are shared by everybody. So if it was you could have the idea of equality. That's a very big American idea that all people are created equal. Or you could have an idea of unity. I very much remember there was a lovable politician who stood up at a political meeting and said, there's no red America or blue America. There's no white America or black America. There's no Native America, no immigrant America is one America. It's just one America. All the differences are covered in one America. And just getting this value, we should be united. And he was just pushing again and again. So it was like one thing, like a value that guy had picked out as being something that everybody could buy into, and how skillfully he was speaking about the one ethical value that people can agree on, and using it to bring people together and to get people to be harmonized with each other and to get them to tolerate and overlook their differences. So it seems to me that this fourth principle about living according to precepts that are shared with companions are both, one, making the greatest effort to not be a hypocrite, but to really uphold these values. And second, having a lot of wisdom to recognize and value and remember the way the values are shared in the community. And then the last one, which is given, is that a mendicant lives according to the view shared with their spiritual companions, the view which is noble and emancipating, and leads one who practices it to the complete end of suffering. So being united in practicing right view, if you are a Buddhist Sangha, if that's the community you're in, if all of us are really making the effort to cultivate right view and to practice with right view, that is both for individual benefit and is also for the welfare and harmony of the community. You can remember at the beginning of this sutta, when we were talking about the imperfections that lead to quarrels, that the last one that was given was said to be worldly view. And so there's a contrast given between the worldly view, which leads to debates and trying to beat somebody up with a debate, as opposed to the right view, which is leading to harmony. And we could say that this right view is both the view that's in accord with the Dhamma taught by the Buddha, and also how a person holds, practices, and develops that view. That they practice with that view in a way that does not lead to conflict, that does not lead to quarreling with anybody, that they realize the view, but they're not clinging to the view, that they're using the view for the sake of freedom from affliction, never using a view as a kind of a weapon with which one would punish or argue with somebody who did not yet understand that view. Dear friends, thank you for your patient listening. This ends the formal part of my talk, and we've got 20 minutes left. I'd really like to know what you think of it, and whether you can remember even one or two ideas that would really make a good difference if you took them to your family, to your workplace, or to your city council meeting. Okay, I'm going to call on Judith. Please unmute yourself. That's
There we go.
Panya Vimutti. Your little screen said Judith, so that's what I said. Upasika Panya Vimutti.
Yes, if my screen says Panya Vimutti, then at my other events, then they don't know who I am. They can't figure out why it says that. So it says Judith. Anyway, well, this talk gave me a lot of, like, you really developed the, the perspective of looking at what gets in the way of harmony, and then the process of, the 6 roots, then the process that one actually has to go through when one finds oneself engaging in those things, right? So to acknowledge, it's a kind of almost kind of like acceptance that this is the truth of the situation. I'm doing this, right? I have just done this thing, and I've just become angry. And then also to see the consequence within that, that leads to, it's like, first, if you acknowledge and then you see the consequence of that, then that is actually like the fuel of creating the determination that one doesn't want that consequence. One doesn't want to create disharmony and disruption and things falling apart, but rather to try to see how can I create harmony. And so then we have a determination to avoid it. And then looking at the fine qualities that are the things that we can develop that actually keeps us out of harm's way, that keeps us away from the unskillful things, and gives us a way to, bringing things back to a state of harmony, to be kind, to share, to really follow the proper ethics, to really have it's like doing the right thing, and to have the right view, and to ultimately it really leads to following the core truths of what the Buddha taught. So I like this talk because it's just a very simple reminder of what our work is, because it is like, I like that whole thing about people being mentally ill and needing to forgive them, because it's so crazy right now. It's very crazy. I spend a lot of time just going, how can this be, right? And because so many arguments and so much pushing against and pretending the other person's view has, that there's nothing in it, but it doesn't lead to a good result. And so if we can really just look at what creates harmony, and in kind of traditional intact cultures where like Buddhism has informed the culture, then you see that like within families, and then you'll see strong families, and you'll see people who want to hang together, and you'll see the country that wants to hang together and come out to some kind of a harmonious resolution to a lot of disruption. So anyway, I really appreciated it.
Thank you for that great summary.
Yeah.
Without delay, I want to go ahead to Matthew and see what he has to say.
Greetings, Ayya Sobhanā. Thank you for this Dhamma talk. My question is related to a family member So one of my family members has a habit of intimidation and aggression. Fortunately, I don't